Welcome to the Strong as Fuck podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Santucci, and join us for some strong conversations. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Strong as Fuck podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Santucci, and today I have a very special guest, a gentleman I met about a year ago at a mastermind. You're probably asking yourself, why the hell was I at a mastermind? Well, to meet guys like this. And I was sitting next to this young gentleman and we were talking and I was blown away by his story. And I said, sir, I'd love to have you on the podcast. So here we are almost a year later, but we finally got him on. Mr. Ian Clark, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm very excited about this because when I first met you and you started telling me your story, I was like, I love this. The idea that people need. Now, I'm not bashing modern science and the medical system at all, but in reality, we wouldn't have made it 400,000 years on this planet if our bodies weren't more resilient, if they didn't know how to recover and do the things that we've done to take care of ourselves over 400,000 years. Mm-hmm. And you're really digging into this. So give us a little backstory. Tell the people about what had happened to you. What, in mid-40s? 46, right?
Yeah, 46, yeah. That was 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And you look great, sir. That's what was the most impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this guy's got a full head of hair.
Yeah.
He looks great.
That's the easy part.
Well, I mean, listen, it's the biggest fear amongst myself and friends of mine. Everybody's losing their hair and they're like, see guys like you. And I'm like, all right, there is hope. There's hope for us.
There's always hope.
So let's dig into this. At 46 years old, you felt ill, got a little sick, whatever.
I got like life-threatening situation with a large tumor right in my perineum, which is between the legs, between the scrotum and the rectum.
Holy shit.
That was a fun one.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a real bad spot to have anything.
It was the best spot because I wouldn't allow anybody to touch me. It was like, you're not going in there with a scalpel. I have no interest in that whatsoever. I had two uncles who died in 1978 on my mom's side. Mm-hmm. 51 and 54 years old. They were both diagnosed with cancer in the same year. They both died 2 days apart of each other. And they both followed exact instructions of the doctors at the time. And it was 1978. So that's the dark ages, you know. And here it was 2004. It seemed like it was my turn. And I was only 46, but I had heart disease and I had this big tumor growing. And within a year and a half, I found out my liver was completely screwed up.
Would you say that your diet was bad? Like, what do you think it was that caused a lot?
It was everything. It was really everything. It started out with fungal infections. Found out I was heavy metal poisoned. I worked in the oil field for 17 years in the field. Okay. On the rigs, right? Mm-hmm. So there's nothing but lead pipe dope everywhere, chemicals, all kinds of crap. I was heavy metal poisoned to the extreme.
Do you see a lot of guys that you used to work with not around as much?
Yeah, they don't make it.
No. The best they do is what, in the 50s?
Yeah, their 50s, yeah. 50s and early 60s. They're totally done by their 60s if they make it.
It seems to me that that's like the threshold, right? You look at pro wrestling. I used to work at a shipping yard where there's a lot of brake dust and cranes and heavy metals around and things like that. And a lot of guys, I mean, beyond 60, it's rare that they make it that far.
That's right, yeah. Well, they're breathing all the crap. So the biggest deal is you're breathing 11,000 liters of air a day. Mm-hmm. You pump 7,200 liters of blood. This is engineering, right? It's just mechanical. It's dynamic. It's mathematical, and you can't get away from it. So you have to make sure you know how to get that stuff out of you. Because just in New York City right here, or any city, you're going to be breathing part of the 10 billions of pounds of tire dust that gets released in the atmosphere every year, just in the United States. And it goes 1.5 miles above the highway. That's where the brake dust and the tire dust goes. And the asphalt is wearing up.
And it just sits there.
It's all nano. You can't see it, taste it, or smell it unless you're standing right on the highway. You'll smell it.
Yeah.
But it goes everywhere. The trade winds carry it all over the fields of the food that grows, top of mountains, bottom of lakes, and it's in us. And so I found out how to get it out and how to remove it.
So you got this little situation going on in a pretty bad spot, if you ask me. What was kind of the first step? Like, I had a that's why I was so interested in the story, because I had a very similar situation where doctors were telling me, oh, I needed surgery. And I just didn't believe it. I felt there was a different way. I knew there was another route to take.
Right.
What do you think helped you realize that?
Well, it's just looking at my uncles, remembering back when I was 20 years old when they died, and they did everything they were told, and they died on time, right in the prognosis time zone. And so I just thought, well, that's ridiculous. We're in 2004. There has to be better ways. And there was nothing better offered at all. And my oldest brother was a medical doctor for 30 years in North Bay, Ontario. He was a general practitioner. He had 11 doctors working in his clinic with him that he oversaw. And he told me, I phoned him up, and he goes, listen, you just got to go in for the surgery. Just do what you're told. You're in Toronto. You got all the specialists. You got everybody right there. And in Canada, healthcare is free, which is bullshit, but that's what they say.
Well, that's an age-old debate, right? Everybody thinks you guys have it so much better up there. Yeah, just for the record, you grew up in Canada where it's just as bad, right? In Toronto, I mean, you're dealing with just as much brake dust and, a lot of the same shit we're dealing with here.
And all the garbage food. It was a lot to do with the food, for sure. Mm-hmm. And then not being aware that your body can heal itself, accepting the death culture that we live in where people have bucket lists. I don't have a bucket list. Mm-hmm. I don't have a legacy. I'm not interested. A bucket list means you're going to kick the bucket. I have no interest in that. And so, we have experience in life. And the longer we live, the more experience we get, the better things get. It's supposed to be that way. You just think about yourself. When you do anything, any talent you have, it's always getting better. Every 10 years, you're like way better, right?
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. I tell people all the time, my craft, my job is being a trainer. This stuff I do for fun. I just happen to own gyms because I'm unemployable and no one else will hire me. So I got to do it for myself.
That's a good thing.
But I say all the time, I go, the skill that I work on that I've developed over the past 15 years is being a trainer. So every day, every hour I do it, I become better at that craft. So why would I stop doing my craft? I get excited about how much better I've become since I started. And when people come into any industry, whether you're a photographer or you're a doctor, whatever it is, you just become better. You become more wise. Everything becomes so much easier. You get into this flow state because all the things that you thought were important just become second nature at that point. Mm-hmm. So why would you stop doing what you're doing? I'm sure you're well into the groove of what you've been doing this for 20 years, right?
20 years, yeah.
And now you spend 5 years doing the research on what you should be doing.
Yeah, that's right. I woke up one morning and I just had this gut instinct that told me that there are people on the earth who have the top level knowledge when it comes to natural healing. I don't know who they are, where they were, how to find them. You have no clue.
Dude, 20 years ago, there was no internet.
Yeah, well,
it wasn't like it is today.
Yeah, that's right.
Was Google a thing in 2020?
Oh, yeah, definitely. 2004? It was coming on.
Yeah.
It was definitely coming on.
It's not what it is today.
Yeah, it kind of started in 1996, and it started to build from there. But I just knew they existed, but I knew I couldn't find them because there's no way you could find them. You could give me $10 trillion, I would never have found them. Mm-hmm. And so I verbally out loud asked to be led. I said, if I could be led, I didn't demand it, just said, if I could be led to those people, whoever they are, I would love that. And if I could have the eyesight to see who they are when I see them, that would be good. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing was, I will do whatever it takes, whatever I'm shown. And if I have to suffer, so be it. If I have to have fun, so be it. I'm into it.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning. It was a little daunting because I didn't know what was going to be required of me.
Was this like a manifestation? You just kind of put it out there in the ether and you're just like...
Yeah. Very much. And that was always in my mind. Mm-hmm. And I started learning about synchronicities and watching for those. And they're crazy. Like once the synchronicities started, they just took off like a tidal wave. And so if a bunch of really weird, similar things happen in that day, I'd pay attention to who I'm speaking to and what I'm hearing, because that was going to lead to the next step. Mm-hmm. It's like going up a ladder. I didn't even know a ladder existed. I was on the ground.
Yeah.
And I found out there was a first rung, and that made a big difference.
Yeah. So now, was this thing troublesome? Like, were you having pain?
It was a major troublesome.
Really?
Every moment I was awake and sitting, I would feel the heartbeat of that thing.
Oh.
I'm rolling around on it. It grew from about a golf ball size where it first was scanned and where they were saying you got to get it cut out immediately or it'll kill you. It grew into a third testicle. I had a testicle the size of a growth the size of a testicle on my scrotum. I had a satellite that went up from there, and then the other one into my rectum. But it didn't block anything, right? It was not like it was just there, and it hurt. And I just knew that cutting it out, I looked it up on Google at the time.
Yeah.
And the surgeries were so gross, they blocked the images.
Oh, I couldn't imagine.
And it's like, yeah, you don't want
You could have had one hell of an OnlyFans if you had that thing right now.
Yeah, right.
People would have paid extra money to see that thing. Holy shit.
Yeah, no.
So how long are you walking around with this thing?
7 years.
And then what made it dissipate? Like how'd you get rid of it?
Well, I started learning about the tumors are generally a combination of fungal infections, yeast overgrowth, especially in that area, chemical overloads, heavy metals, because the heavy metals distract the immune system from being able to deal with the pathogens. And that I had also other different bacterial overgrowths. And so I just started dealing with them. People would show me, you got to do this, 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 and this. And it just slowly dissipated. And I refused to be afraid. Everybody wanted to scare me to death. My brother phoned my mom up. When he found out I was taking a natural approach to it, he phoned my mom and said, yeah, Ian's committing suicide. So just so you know.
Wow.
And when I heard that one, I went, okay, guys, pattern interrupt. I need a break. No more of that talk.
Mm-hmm.
Give me at least 24 months and let's see what happens.
So because you're a manifestation guy and, you kind of believe in self-healing, do you think all the negative talk that people have, that inner dialogue, do you think that affects the way their bodies function as well?
It affects everything because your body listens immediately. Like if I was the authority and I told you you're diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and you say that and you go home to your family and say, I've got a diagnosis of stage 4 cancer, you got it, buddy.
Yeah. You start to believe it.
Yep. I don't believe I had cancer for 1 second.
Yeah. I was just here. Somebody was just telling me a story about this. That their grandmother, people would just say, oh, you're sick, you're sick. She's like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. She refused to believe it. And all the things that the doctors had told her, they're like, hey, you're not going to last. This woman's like still alive. And this happened like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And she just refused to accept it. I mean, listen, I know there's a ton of people out there who think this is like bullshit and that it's not true. A friend of mine, a buddy of mine we're very close. He's like, I would always tell him, hey man, I journal, I write things down. And a lot of the things that I've wrote things down and I say it out loud, they've come true. I've made these things come true. And he did it. And just recently he sold his apartment here in the city. He sold his house up in Connecticut, bought a new house, had another baby. Like these things that most people will do over the course of 5 years, he did in a month span. And he's like, I'm really into this now. Like I think people forget about how we vibrate through this world and how everything's energy, and I think there's definitely something to it. None of us understand it yet. And I'm hoping, and eventually maybe not in our lifetime, but eventually somebody will be able to explain this. Right? Think about it, thousands of years ago, we used to think there were gods that punished us and, tore apart the earth and, rained down upon us. And then we're like, oh no, that's just the weather patterns and that's how it works. So we understand so much more now. And I think eventually we're going to understand more about how our brains work, how our bodies function. I believe the same thing. Like years ago, I had a doctor tell me, hey, your back's screwed up. You have herniated disc. You need to get your back fused. And to me, it just seems so unnatural. It's like humans trying to play God. And you're going to fuse my spine and expect me to perform and live my life the way I normally would. I refused to do anything. I worked on it and I changed the way my body worked after 2 years. And I tell everybody, don't accept, your body's going to go through some sort of pain and some sort of pain period. You just have to wait it out, figure out what you need to do. Yep. I mean, I think a lot of it with, even these cancers and stuff, there's so many different, if you change your diet, if you change the way you live, I mean, you might have to relocate or something, but isn't that worth your life at that point? So.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so over the 20-year span, I've learned 2 words that hold the goal. And that those 2 words are perfect health. If I'm worried about not getting cancer, or I'm worried about, diabetes, all these names and terms they want to give you of disease, that's irrelevant. If your goal is perfect health, and I tell people that and they go, well, you can't have perfect health. I said, you're 100% correct. That's what you just said. And you can't have perfect health. You're right. I say you can. And the goal is that you can. You actually can.
Yeah.
But that's the goal. Whether I have perfect health right now or not is irrelevant. That's the goal.
Yep.
So that's what we can actually achieve and have All you got to do is just speak about it. Everything you think you're going to speak, right? And as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just a matter of how much do you love yourself? Well, I know you love yourself very, very much, and you care about yourself very much, but you may not know how much yet. So when I was 46 and going to lose my body in 3 years, I found out that I cared 1 billion times more than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't being very careful at that time. I wasn't watching what I was eating. I was eating all the GMO crap. I was eating fast food. I wasn't drinking alcohol or anything, but it didn't matter. My liver was toast. I had a fatty liver. My enzyme numbers were off the charts. They didn't even know how I was alive when I got finally tested.
That's were you overweight? Were you out of shape?
I was way overweight and way out of shape.
Okay.
I was like 80 pounds heavier than I am now.
I don't know what the culture is up in Canada, but I know here when in the past couple of years, I call it, we're perpetuating bad behavior. We're telling people like, oh, it's okay to be overweight, but there is no study or no understanding of any kind that says that being out of shape and overweight is okay.
Right.
It will definitely, without a doubt, have some sort of detrimental effects on your mood, your personality, the way you operate through life. Everything about your life could be improved just by taking care of yourself.
Right. And it's a quality of life situation. You know, people talk about living a long time. That's great. I don't even bother with longevity anymore because if you look at longevity, most people who live a long time suffer more and more before they die. And there's no joy in that whatsoever. So if you have a key performance indicator, which is one thing, that today you're a little bit healthier than you were yesterday in every category.
Yep.
And a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So if a link gets weak, you better work on that because if it breaks, you're dead. You can be healthy in all these other areas, but your physical body will die. So when you look at yourself, Kenny, you are the asset, right? You're the asset in your world. Your body is your number one asset, is worth more than anything else you've ever worked for or ever invested in by 1 million, billion, trillion times. There's nothing that comes close to the value of your body. So your body should be, as you get older, get a little bit healthier every day in every category once you have the tools and the knowledge of what to do. And if you don't have those things and it's held back from you, the suppression of information is the killer because you didn't realize, hey, like all of a sudden you get some diagnosis that's terminal. Well, where'd that come from?
Everything else that people deem important now becomes irrelevant. As soon as you hear that news, as soon as somebody tells you, hey, you ain't got much time, all this other shit is. So I was just saying to somebody the other day, people could tell you the ins and outs of their business. They could tell you where everything is in their home, but they can't tell you how well their body operates. They don't know what they're putting in, what it puts out. Why would you not want to know how this vessel works, you know, and how to take care of it better? You know, people are so like, oh, I'm going to put a new roof on my house. It's going to cost me $50,000. It's like, okay, well, why wouldn't you take care of your body just as much as you want to take care of your house? You know, I know my family was my parents were always worried about fixing the house and doing all these things and spend thousands of dollars to have like nice shit around the house. And I go, but you both look like hell. Neither of you take care of yourself, you know, and they didn't nowadays, even more so than before, but in the past, people didn't think that spending money on health and wellness, products that could improve your lifestyle, the way your body works, going to a gym. You know, there's a lot of people who I debate with all the time. They're like, well, why would I spend so much money on going to a gym? Well, most of the people who spend $20 to go to a gym look like they spend $20 to go to a gym. You know, the people who invest their money into a gym, they clearly take it a lot more serious, you know? So when you have the opportunity to learn, to grow, to improve your life, and it might cost a little bit of money, I don't think of it like, oh, I'm blowing money on this. I'm investing in myself so that every other aspect of my life gets increasingly better.
It's the same thing as the wording your people use, you know, is, well, that's so expensive. Well, as soon as I hear that word, they're thinking of it as an expense, not an investment. If that's a worthy investment, you're going to get a huge return on it. And you mentioned about, you know, knowing how the body works. You get a guy who owns a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. They know everything about that freaking car, right?
Yep.
Everything. And our bodies are supposed to be luxury sports cars.
100%.
And so if our body's like that, wow, you're getting better all the time. You're thinking about tuning it up all the time. You're getting it to be high performance. You don't want to do something that's going to wear that vehicle out.
No, I tell people, if you think of your body like a car, would you ever put dirt in the engine of a Ferrari or a Bentley? You spent all this money on this car. It's the most important. Why are you putting this cheap, shitty fuel in there? And they're like, oh, it tastes good. But in reality, right, if you were to put a McDonald's cheeseburger next to, a grass-fed, grass-finished, prime beef burger, I mean, there's really no comparison, right? Like, it's insane when people are like, oh, but it tastes so good. It's cheap, shitty, tastes like cardboard. Like when you're used to eating really good food or like real food and you compare it to something shitty like that, I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to the why too. Like why would you want to have a high performance body? There's about a billion whys,
Everything. Everything. You just operate on a different level. You feel better. When you wake up in the morning and you're ready to tackle the day, you just feel a certain way. I can't think of anything that's more important. When I get up in the morning, last week, 2 weeks ago, I went with a couple buddies. We went to the UFC fight. It's the first time I drank in a while. I had like 2 or 3 drinks. I felt like dog shit for 2 days.
Right.
Horrible. And I'm like, I just can't do this anymore because I've completely gotten it out of my system. I don't even look forward to it anymore. And now when I implement it into my body, I'm like, this is terrible. You're actually putting poison into your body, So I tell people, like, when you get to that point, you're not going to want to do it anymore. Same thing. When you start to eat more efficiently and, cleaner, then you don't even want to do it. So during COVID, when did you start selling the products? When did you get
17 years ago.
Okay. But you really saw it skyrocket after COVID, right?
Well, it was always going well. Like I ignored COVID to start with.
Okay.
I didn't go to a protest. I didn't talk about it.
Oh, no way. That's so crazy.
Yeah,
you didn't have the fucking free time to go march in the streets like a fucking jobless idiot. How many people would be like, oh, come to a protest? I go, I have to work. What the fuck? Even if I had free time, that's not what I'm going to do with it.
Definitely not.
No.
I didn't pay attention to it at all. I just ignored it. And I knew that if there was a contagion in the air, it would never stop multiplying forever and everybody would be dead. I can't believe how the entire world went along with this fucking thing. Because it's not like it just showed up on March 16th. Yeah,
Clearly, I think the first case of somebody dying in New York was like November.
Yeah.
So you're going to tell me somebody died in November, December, and January, what, did it take a fucking vacation and came back in March? What? I don't get.
Yeah.
What don't you all get? And then after everyone's in their homes, then people are dying by the thousands?
Yeah, right.
What the fuck? None of this adds up,
No. Well, the mathematics of it was comical because it was like, nobody was dying, were they, in the whole world? No. All of a sudden now, that person died. Seriously? There's 164,000 people who die every single day. And leading up to that, because I had done study on what was killing people, what were the big things.
Yeah.
And, like, of course, heart disease, cancer, blah, blah, boring stuff.
Yeah.
There's 17,700 people dying every day of lower respiratory infections and lung disease, not including cancer, every day. 17,700, way before the word COVID was even mentioned.
Yeah.
It's like, they forgot to mention that in the news. Oh, did they? Yeah. Oh, yeah, they didn't say that.
Well, we didn't report all the people that always die because it would eat up every airway we have.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So where do you see most people kind of adopting, your way of thinking and your, the use of your products? Where'd you start to see it grow?
Well, it's the audience who actually care about themselves enough to do something. They love themselves.
They're early adopters.
Then you get your innovators and then you hit your mass as well. But the mass really is about 4%. It's 96% of the world still is so socially conditioned to believing that you should get sick when you get older, that you should expect things in your 50s, 60s, and 70s. You should not live really past 75 to 85 because that's where we're totally conditioned, or I was at that time, conditioned to that thought pattern. And it's validated by the fact that everyone around you constantly dies like that. When you're a little kid, you watch your grandparents get old and die. Then you become an adult, you watch your parents get old and die, and you think it's your turn.
Yeah.
No, that is a total paradigm shift. So there's a death culture that basically runs the world. Fear of death, fear of sickness, fear of poverty, fear of all that stuff. That causes people anxiety and stress hormones, which messes with them. And then they believe it's true for them. It's not.
Stress, I believe, is the one thing that no one really mentioned. Oh, how'd that person die? I'm like, I would say it stemmed from stress and then everything else came after.
Right.
You know, you see people, they just worry and worry and worry. Oh, it runs in my family. You know, there's all these studies now saying that most things, only 5% of, you know, these viruses and these generational things that people think they get passed down. It's like, oh, it runs in my family. Oh, they were bald. My grandfather was bald by 25.
Right.
Right. My dad was bald by 30. I'm 41. I'm thank God I have, you know, most of my hair. I mean, it looks pretty good from this angle. It's a little gray on the sides, but it had nothing to do with being a generational thing. You know, I think it's more to do with the way you take care of yourself. And I think more people need to, and I think people are adopting it more than ever before, but it's still, it's like turning around a battleship. To get everybody to start to believe the same shit we believe it'll take another 20 years.
That's right.
30.
And there's around 4% of the population who have a feeling that they could get healthier as they get older, but they don't know how. So then if you take 1/80th of 1% of the world population, is about 80 million people, just try to serve 80 million people. I did the math on it. Just for every 1 million people we serve, they're going to invest about $10 a day minimum in their health. What does that work out to? 1 million people per day spending $10. We have to do 10 million a sale a day. And that's a $4 billion revenue business. I don't know anybody in our industry who's doing that. And so it's like, what's up with that? It's only $10 a day, everybody.
Yeah.
Right. But you have to have.
I spent $10 a day on coffee.
Yeah.
Easy.
Right.
Probably $30 a day. Because a coffee in New York City is what, $7, $8? How much was the last coffee you bought? Probably $7, and it's shit too. Yeah. Blue Bottle was $9 a coffee, right?
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. And it's just, again, it goes back to math. How much do you care to invest in yourself? And so like when I was told I had 3 years to live by the medical prognosis in 2004, I didn't say, well, I'm going to be dead in 3 years. No, I have 3 years to live. Let's use that 3 years to get 5 years. And let's use the 5 years to get 15. Let's use the 15 to get 50. Let's use the 50 to get a few hundred. Yeah. And everybody goes, you're totally nuts. And I go, yeah, according to you, you're right. But according to me, not nuts at all, because I see all these iterations of all these improvements of just learning what I now call the master keys. I didn't know what a master key was until November 1st, 2017 is when I first was handed the first master key for health. And when I utilized that, within 6 months, I saw thousands of keys no longer required, because there's hundreds of thousands of keys down here in the medical and the nutraceutical world, in the pharmaceutical and nutraceutical. And those are all remedies. What if you could remove every single problem? You don't need a single remedy. That's the goal. I found out that's true, that you actually can. So there are multiple master keys at the top level of each thing. What's the biggest thing that kills a man right now? Prostate problems. If a man gets a prostate problem in their 60s, 70s, they don't want to live. They can't stand it.
Yeah.
The pain is so severe. The meds are so many side effects. Their quality of life tanks.
I think that's what it is. I think people get to a point where they're so sick and so fed up.
Yep. They're done.
Ugh.
And they just want to die.
Yeah. You at that point, you just want to die.
Yep.
So how often do you ever like get a cold or sick or?
No,
never.
No. And getting a cold or flu is really good, because what happens is your body will detoxify heavily in that 2-week period. and you feel like $1 billion after you have a cold or flu. You're like, wow, I'm a new person.
Mm-hmm.
So what I found out is how to gently detox everything every single day. And I found out I had a massive accumulation of all this stuff that was killing me. And so I got it all out. And now every single day I just maintain keeping it out. So my body doesn't have to get a cold or flu. If I didn't do that, it would have to get a cold or flu.
And what's going on in the body?
Well, what's going on in the body? Your body produces 1.5 liters per day of mucus fluid. You have mucous membranes externally and internally. And that 1.5 liters is going to recycle itself constantly to keep your immune system supported so you don't have congestion. If you get congested in your body, you get a buildup of all this toxic crap you're breathing or eating or drinking. Your body has to remove it, and it gets behind. So the older you get, the more it accumulates, the further you fall behind. And so you have to bring yourself back up to speed. We can't talk about all that today because it's involved.
Yeah.
But it's actually really simple. So it took over the last 20 years to just watch out for the master keys and accumulate them. All I did was curate them. I never came up with them. I researched researchers who had spent their lifetime on things like cardiovascular health or brain health or endocrine system, autonomic nervous system, your digestion, and so on. All those areas all work in synergy with each other. So there's no reason to get sick when you have nothing to purge. When you get jammed up because you don't know how to do that, you're going to suffer. And then you'll go through that suffering. Hopefully you don't die. It's like...
What are 3 protocols that you think most people could adopt tomorrow? I'm like to think I'm a man of action, and I like doing things right away. Everybody's like, I'll wait till New Year's or next week's a good time. What are 3 things that people could start to do tomorrow? And even some products that you might have that people could get and start to improve their quality of life right away.
Well, number 1 would be hydration. You need to hydrate your body to thoroughly have the fluids going in and out so it can carry all the crap that you breathed in out of your body. That's the first start. It takes I started that when I was 64, when I really learned how to hydrate properly. And it took a year every single day to get all the accumulation of crap out of my system. I had like black soot coming out of my bowel movements for months to start with.
Really?
Yep.
So what are you thinking? 1.5 liters, 2 liters, a gallon?
Well, if you drink a whole bunch of water every day, you'll dehydrate yourself. Because
ladies out there, Christy, did you hear that? If you drink too much water,
you'll dehydrate yourself.
Yeah,
because water is a pure substance as a solvent, and you're a walking ocean. People say you have 80% water in your body. That's not true at all. Give me some water, you won't be able to. Like if you cry a tear, it's like ocean water. Same with sweat.
Yeah.
Salty.
Yep.
You're salt. You're a salt being.
Yeah.
So you have to replenish your salinity, has to be brought back up to speed. That allows you to produce more blood. So your body produces blood 24 hours a day. The bone marrow is where you produce the blood. You're producing it all the time, but you're not producing even close to enough. So from 0 to 21, you produce a lot of blood, because all your bone marrow is dark red.
So for everybody walking around out there with those giant gallons of water and those,
worst thing.
What are those stupid things that you all have? I've never thrown away so many Stanley cups in my life in the last year because the girls leave them around the gym. Well, I go, here's my thing. Yeah. People walk around now. I don't know who convinced everyone that they need to spend $75 on water bottles, but everybody's got these $75 water bottles. They walk around every day like they're walking across the fucking Sahara Desert, carrying around these water bottles. And they're like, I need water. Could I have water? I ran out of water. Do you have anywhere I can fill up water? I'm like, why do you think you all, I never drink this much water and I work out more than every one of you. How the fuck are you always dehydrated?
Right. Well, they are dehydrated the more they drink the water. The more dehydrated.
Because they're always like drinking, and then they're using the bathroom. If they're not in the fucking bathroom pissing, they're out there filling up their water bottle. I'm like, you spend 7 minutes working out. Right. How is this possible? You're always fucking drinking. So, what should people be doing instead of drinking water all the time?
Well, they have to focus on electrolytic fluid. So your body has 80% of your body is electrolytic fluid. is full of electrolytes. And every time you drink water, you're diminishing the electrolytes. Every time you pee, you're peeing electrolytes out because the water demands salinity transfer.
Okay.
There's an osmotic law that if you have if you have salt water here in a liter and you have a liter of pure water, you pour those 2 liters into a jug, it's going to be exactly 50% in the first millisecond because it just immediately donates the greater to the lesser immediately. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's the problem. So you have to have certain elements in your water, and the water has to be able to get into the cell. Mm-hmm. And it's a thing called true hydration. I'll share a link with you.
Okay.
You only drink 2 12-ounce portions of this fluid per day. It's water with very specific, is hundreds of millions of dollars of research went into this, and nobody knows about it yet. There's very few people. And when you drink that on an empty stomach, 12 ounces, every 12 hours, you've totally hydrated yourself. You'll experience that in the very first day that you do that. And every day going forward, you're going to experience a better quality of life. That's just the way it is.
I'm a big watermelon guy. I eat a ton of watermelon.
Right.
What's your thoughts on
Well, any fruit that has fluid in it has very, very good quality liquid in it, provided it's not GMO or hasn't been sprayed to death, because the water from the earth is going from the base of the roots all the way up the trunk, all the way out to the branches, and it has this amazing filtration system within it. So the fluid inside there is extremely high quality. The only issue I have with that, because I ate a lot of watermelon in my life, is the carbs are giving your body way too much glycogen. Glycogen is a fuel that everyone burns. Mm-hmm. The whole world lives on glycogen for fuel. Glycogen burns fast, hot, and dirty. It's a dirty fuel. It puts your insulin onto a roller coaster ride. Mm-hmm. Insulin, glucose, fructose, whatever, it all converts to glucose, and that builds glycogen. Mm-hmm. And that's where you store your energy. So you get like if you work out all the time and eat a lot, you can build up to 10,000 calories of glycogen in your system as a storage tank. So you go to an Ironman competition, you got the fuel you need for that day. Mm-hmm. Well, I flipped my body over the course of a year from using glycogen for fuel to get rid of it completely, and I burn fat for fuel. You can store 100,000 calories of fat in your system for energy. Far superior. It burns slow, cool, and clean. There's no inflammatory stuff, and you have zero insulin spike all day. So where do you get your blood sugar from? It's really simple. Your pancreas produces 2 major hormones, insulin and glucagon. Glucagon is your body's ability to keep your blood sugar perfect. You never spike your insulin. And the moment you spike your insulin, you don't have access to leptin, not to be confused with lectin. Mm-hmm. Okay, lectin's a toxic thing in vegetables. Leptin is your master hormone. So when you get access to the leptin, because you're not spiking your insulin, you're not spiking your cortisol, and you're not spiking your adrenaline, now your whole GPS system comes in place to guide your endocrine system. So a male will produce testosterone like you did when you're young, when you're 80 or 100.
So what's your diet look like?
My diet's really simple. And I don't even call it a diet. I call it fat for fuel.
Sure.
So in the morning I'll wake up, I'll melt an eighth of a pound of ghee, clarified butter. Not butter. Butter's trash.
Yeah. I only eat ghee.
Yep. Yeah, because the milk solids and milk proteins are toxic to you.
Yeah. Well, people are like, oh, it's still butter. I'm like, it's a better.
Oh, no, this is clarified butter. It has only the fat, which is the stuff you want. Mm-hmm. And I mix that with 2 egg whites. I take the egg yolks, which are very sensitive embryos, and I put them aside. I never cook them. I never blend them. I blend the melted ghee with 2 egg whites from a large size egg. It has to be pasture raised, organic. And that becomes a slurry. It becomes a 1 unit. You put that in the frying pan, cook it. I dump that on top of the uncooked yolks, just gently mix them together with some cayenne pepper and some salt, and that will fill you up for 4 hours and give you plenty of energy because the fat is the fuel.
Really?
Yep. It's amazing. And it tastes so great. And then at lunchtime, I'll take a combination of ghee and I'll mix that with some goat cheese. I already pre-make it for the week ahead. I'll put in some ground up pumpkin seeds in there that are sprouted organic to give us some texture and also very high nutrient for the whole reproductive organ for men and women. And then I put in cayenne pepper and salt. I wrap that in like a romaine lettuce or like a little butter leaf lettuce. chow down 4 or 5 mouthfuls of that. And that immediately satisfies your hunger, which is the leptin, telling the brain you're good, you're not starving. And then I'll have a palm size of whatever protein, whether like a ribeye steak or lamb chops or whatever it is. Because as soon as you have more than the size of your palm in your hand for your body size, you're going to convert that to glucose when you have more than what your body wants. Now you're back to the glycogen problem.
See, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So I like to eat. I enjoy eating. I know there's a lot of people out there who feel the same way. So I always try to just fill up on more protein and fats and literally no carbohydrates unless it's a fruit. I'm the leanest I've ever been. I'm in pretty decent shape, I'd like to think. But I always felt like eventually that protein does break down into glucose.
Well, 100% is proven scientifically. It's a neogenesis into that glucose because your body only wants so much protein. If you're working out a lot, you're going to have, if you have that for fuel rather than glycogen, you're going to build long, lean, super strong muscles that have a major amount of endurance because you're using the clean fuel. So if you want to shorten your life, work out like crazy and eat a ton of glycogen food. You'll burn yourself right to the ground. The average life expectancy is 7 to 8% shorter for a person who's bodybuilding the wrong way. When you bodybuild the right way, because you go to these, Mr. Universe competitions,
those guys are
morphed right out.
60, yeah.
Why are their muscles like that? Because when you have glycogen for fuel, your muscles only have a finite number of fibers. You don't grow more fiber. You expand the fibers by having it torn apart to get scar tissue inside that makes the muscle look bigger, but it's not any stronger. You're going to get stronger being a bodybuilder, but you're not going to get stronger except for you're going to be taxed. When you have fat for fuel, your muscles build like this. They don't tear. They don't get scar tissue at all. Very dense, way stronger, way more resilient, do not get damaged, do not tear up, and you have far, far greater stamina. And then you live way longer because you're not shortening your life, you're extending your life. Your muscles are your battery charger and your bone marrow is your battery.
Why do you think there's such a move towards, is it just a general understanding? Is it the research? Is it, is it a proven thing? Everybody's talking about how muscle tissue is so important, but this wasn't a thing 5 years ago. Every professional I know within the health and wellness space is now talking about how important muscle tissue is, how important it is to strength train. Who discovered this, and why do you think it's so relevant within the last 3 to 5 years?
Well, it's just becoming a little bit more mainstream than it was. I found out about this starting 20 years ago. I just didn't understand the fuel.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the fiber in the scar tissue. And all guys like to be a little bit more beefy, but no, you want to be stronger. You want to be more functional. You want to be not able to be injured. You don't want to be tearing your hamstrings and your your biceps.
Bulletproof yourself. Yeah. No, because I feel like, I've been in the health and wellness space professionally for about 15 years, but I've been working out since I was 13, 14 years old. And it was always like, have healthy carbohydrates, rice and potatoes and things that could be grown from the ground. It's all well and good. It's fine. I've done it every once in a while. I have a little bit of rice and potatoes, but I don't see a necessity for it. I don't see a need for it. Like there's days, if not weeks, that go by that I don't have any carbohydrates like that. I don't even think about it anymore. I don't crave it as much.
Right.
And when I start to eat it, that's when I want it more.
Exactly, because it's cheap fuel that breeds itself and makes you hungry because you're starving yourself. Your body actually thinks it's starving.
So tell me about the
percussion.
Slapping.
So that was the first master key.
Yeah.
And everybody always likes to pose the question, if you could only have one thing in your life that would be the most important, what would you choose? Well, that's never going to be the case. You can always have a number of everything. But if I was told that, I would choose that percussion therapy, bioregenerative release. I would choose that above everything by 100x at least. And the reason that is because the body is a miraculous biological thing. And in classical Chinese medicine, it was discovered thousands of years ago that if you stimulate the body from the outside in, on the meridians particularly. A meridian is simply an energy pathway that's connected to your organs. And so the inside of the left elbow is the heart and the lungs. This is the liver, gallbladder, spleen, and large intestine over here. Behind the knees is pancreas and kidneys. Top of the hands, top of the feet is your small intestines and your stomach. And so what happens when you stimulate through percussion, and it's not tapping, it's actually slapping the skin directly. You can use your hand, which takes 10 minutes times 3 treatments. Mm-hmm. And there's a little tool called the activator that I found out about.
I have one.
Right? Yeah, very cool.
The young lady over there gave me one. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I was trying to use it on Chrissy. She wasn't having it.
No, yeah. Most people won't have it because it's the optics, and we're trained that if you have pain, burning, swelling, and bruising, that's bad. Mm-hmm. And it really is. I mean, if you were hit by a baseball in your bicep or your thigh, right? Mm-hmm. It'll sit there. That's damage. You've damaged the muscle. You've torn it. It'll take 6 to 8 weeks, and it didn't help you at all. Mm-hmm. This is exactly the opposite. So everybody thinks that if you slap yourself in one place for 5 minutes with the activator, of course it's going to swell up and bruise and burn and be painful. Mm-hmm. It's not the truth. I can do the majority of my body right now and nothing comes out. The only part of my body that will still cause the swelling, bruising, pain, and burning is an area that hasn't been done. And I could take my left knee, for example, which was healed in 2018, from 8 5-minute treatments where this knee was so severely damaged when I was 21 years old that I couldn't snow ski or water ski for 39 years until I found out about this.
Wow.
This knee was so bad that just sitting in an auditorium or a theater, if I couldn't put my legs straight because the chair's in front of me and somebody's sitting there, I'd leave in 20 minutes. The pain was that bad.
I believe it.
If I twisted this knee just going down a set of stairs incorrectly, it would blow up like a basketball for a week and ache and kill me.
Really?
It was that bad. So I did 8 5-minute treatments in May of 2018, and 1 week later, my knee was completely healed.
And it's just that percussion therapy. I think do you see a correlation between Chinese medicine? I'm a big acupuncture guy. I love it. Percussion therapy, I just had the owner of Therabody on here, and he believes in the percussion therapy and how it kind of calms the central nervous system. And then basically what you're talking about, this percussion therapy on, any injured part of the body. Mm-hmm. I think we're all kind of getting closer to understanding what's actually going on. Do you think there's a little bit of parallel between all these things?
Well, there's a movement happening right now, and I'm inspired to create a much larger movement than what was created by the original Chinese gentleman who rediscovered it, because he was going around the world teaching people, but he was a bit of a maverick. He's a really good guy. Like, this guy is so all heart, but he started dealing with type 1 diabetes and ended up in jail twice over it, in prison, because you don't mess with that. Like, it had nothing to do with the slapping per se, but it had to do with refiring up a type 1 diabetic, getting their pancreas running again, which it does. But you're a high risk, very high risk. And so he ended up, being incarcerated because there were 2 mishaps where people died.
Really?
It had nothing to do with the slapping. It had to do with the insulin. You can't be on insulin for a full 2 weeks. And you got to be checking blood sugar. There has to be 3 people on that person's body 24 hours on 8-hour shifts for 2 solid weeks. You have to fast and eat just the right amount of food, and you got to be slapped in certain areas throughout your body the whole time. And then you get out of it and everything fires up again. But it is high risk. There was a woman who died and then a child who died. He never did the treatments. He just showed people, had them sign off waivers. It didn't matter. Mm-hmm. They still implicated him. They do not. And when I say they, the people who run the industrial part of our world do not want this known, because it eliminates massive medical things that are no longer required. It's a master key that deals with so many areas of your health, from structural. Not only does it do injuries, if you're a pro ball pitcher, for example, you're pitching 100 miles an hour, those guys, they have an 8 to 9 year career and they're retired because they've totally toasted their shoulder. Mm-hmm. If they did 8 5-minute treatments on that shoulder before they started pitching, it'll never wear out. It doesn't wear out. Why did it wear out? Because of abrasives from what they were breathing. It just wore it out. Mm-hmm. If you work out all the time before you get that stuff out of your body, you're wearing yourself out every single time. You got to go through your whole entire body. That's why I didn't get into major body work at this point, like as far as heavy lifting. I'm right now at the place where I'm going to get into it, but I knew that I was wearing myself out. I had a torn rotator cuff on this shoulder when I was 24, 52 years old, and 62. severe torn rotator cuff. And the last time it was so severe that my arm dropped down by my side and I couldn't pick it up. And the pain went through the roof for 12 hours. I was nauseous and I had a real high fever and I couldn't sleep the whole night. 7:30 in the morning, I got out of bed wide awake as I was all night in total pain. Got my son Alex to come over and do a 5-minute treatment right where that major inflammation was. It blew right up. He was freaking out doing it. He goes, I don't want to do this. I go, calm down, just do it. 5 minutes later, after the treatment was done, 90% of the pain was gone. I slept for 6 hours. 1 week later, totally healed. I mean, I got perfect freaking shoulders. I did all the rest of my shoulder parts as well. But yeah, this is major, major deal.
So now how much shit do you take on social media? Because you're out there saying some stuff that, one, I think affects a lot of people in the medical industry who are saying, oh, you need this, that, and the other thing. And you're like, no, you don't. You just need to follow these protocols. How much shit do you...
Well, I get a certain amount, but I'm very, very careful with that because I'm not against the medical establishments at all. They help people all day, every day. And those people have no knowledge. They have to go there. They don't have any choice. They don't know about these things. So as you begin to learn, you don't need that. The goal is to never, ever need to go to a doctor or a dentist.
Yeah.
Right? That's the goal. I'm not against them. I mean, you're never going to shut down the industry because to get the word out is such an intense thing. So I get a bit of heat, but I go, if they say you're full of shit, I go, you're 100% right. You are 100% right. I'm actually not. But your perception says that I am. And so therefore you are right about what you think.
But you look at something, I mean, I've been cold plunging for a good number of years now, but in the last 3 to 4 years, it's become this phenomenon because the right people are saying these things. They're talking about all the benefits of it. And you have a lot of people, when your friends start doing it who bash it and they're like, oh, I see the beauty of it now. It's almost like it's not even cool anymore to do it.
Right.
But you have so many people adopting that lifestyle. I mean, just the other day I was at an event and they're launching this new cold plunge and it's like $20,000.
Right.
And people are buying these very expensive cold plunges because they're now seeing the benefits of it. Do you think it takes just the right person telling people these things?
Well, the cold plunging and the intermittent fasting are two really heavy trending things that have gone more and more as time went on. They are absolutely...
very mainstream.
That's right. Yeah. But they're very essential when you're using glycogen for fuel. As soon as you tap into glycogen for fuel, you have to do intermittent fasting. You've got to give your body a break and you've got to do the cold plunging to get the fire out. When you do fat for fuel, I have zero requirement for I never intermittent fast now. My body weight went to exactly where it wanted to go perfectly. And I never do cold plunging because I don't have any inflammation to get out whatsoever. So it's no longer required. But it absolutely is required. Like I highly recommend people to intermittent fast and do cold plunging when they are not going to convert themselves to fat for fuel. Right. And most people are not going to.
No.
The reason they won't is because you cannot touch a person's diet. The food you consume is sacred to you. Something you do every single day. I'm not going to go and start telling you what to eat. If you ask me what I eat, I'll show you. But it's up to you what you do with it. That's a master key. So there's master keys that dissolve all the thousands of keys, right? And there's master keys, which I now know is the percussion therapy and fat for fuel. Those are the two biggest ones of all. They make the biggest difference.
So when we were talking about the 3 things that everybody could implement tomorrow, so you're saying less hydration, but better quality hydration.
Well, more hydration, less fluids, no clean water, no pure water. Now, you can put hydrogen in the water. That's another thing that's coming on.
Yeah. I've been seeing a lot of that.
Yeah. But there's a lot of crap hydrogen products in the market. They're cheap. They're garbage. They do not deliver.
When they say
one company that does,
when they say they're putting hydration in the water, I mean, Hydrogen. Isn't there already hydrogen in water?
Yeah, well, it's H2O, but no, H2 is very specific. So you're bringing the H2 quantities up to 4.5 parts per million.
Okay.
Now, the key is you got to spend the money in the right equipment. It's not terribly expensive. It's like the return on the investment is like 100x. If you go try to find a cheap hydrogen water generator, what they do, they produce bubbles that are not nano, and they accumulate into a larger bubble and it doesn't even get into your cell. You're wasting your time and money. You think you're getting something, but you're not. That's the worst thing. If you think you're getting a benefit, but you're not, you're getting sucked in.
Mm-hmm.
So Echo Water is a gentleman I met many years ago. He spent millions and millions of dollars into the research of finding out what the actual nanobubble really is, how to do it correctly, and how to get the parts per million up high enough. And that the company's called Echo. And they have this little Echo Go. And you just make your little hydrogen water. That's what I drink in between the true hydration, throughout the day, because I like to have fluids for a bunch of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But I make sure that it has the elements in it that I need. And that water is optimized so that it actually because you can measure the osmosis now in the body. It's a full science.
Really?
You can tell, for sure, you can tell if that fluid is getting in the cell and doing its job. Hydrogen permeates the cell wall instantly.
Do you think that improves performance as well? So
major brain performance, overall physical body performance, for sure.
So better hydration.
Yep.
2 and 3.
2 and 3. Well, I got to put number 1 at the slapping therapy.
The percussion
number
therapy.
1, yeah, that's number 1.
So what's your thoughts on like Theragun and
No, so you have to have a Theragun if you don't know this. If you know this, you don't need any of those things.
Yeah.
That master key displaces all of these thousands of technologies that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So then the third one is the fat for fuel. Massive master key. So you got those 3 things.
It's going to be a little difficult for most of these people. I'm an early adopter. I like getting onto these things. I had the percussion therapy done on me, my shoulder. We did my back. And it was, I believe in it. I definitely think it's legitimate. I also do acupuncture. Like I said, I mean, I have my acupuncturist who some people that I've sent to him think he's a quack. I think he's amazing. There's times I have stomach issues or, pain, and he'll start pinning my foot and my pain goes away.
Right.
In my stomach.
Right.
I think the body's a lot more connected than people think it is. And I'm a big fan of healing. I'd rather heal myself than go to somebody who just wants to, cut me open or do something wacky. But there's a lot of people out there who are very hesitant to try something like this.
Sure.
It just seems very foreign to them. I always compare it to going to a foreign country, and there's a McDonald's and then there's like a local spot. And most people go towards the McDonald's because they're like, oh, it's familiar. In my head, it seems more safe than going to the place that probably has better food than the McDonald's. Right?
Yeah, it's a psychological thing. So what I've learned over the years is to deal with the psychological barriers that people have first.
Oh, for sure.
Because if you start telling them what and how, they go, but why? The why is the psychological. So just like you've had some of the percussion therapy, and now you believe it, and then you know that it's good, but you got to know that you know that you know that you know that you know, and so on. And the more you do it, the more courage you get to do more of it.
Yep.
You got to get through that first barrier of getting enough courage to do it to start with, but you have enough courage to do it. Then you earn courage points and you go through that. It's just like I found out that the fat for fuel worked better than anything I could possibly have dreamed of when it came to fueling my body. It's like, well, why doesn't everybody know about this? Well, because they're totally conditioned with hyperpalatable foods. They're hooked on the food they eat, and they're addicted to it, right? They have to have it. The same with traditional Chinese medicine. Traditional Chinese medicine is looking at your tongue, taking your pulse, right? Giving you herbs, diagnosing you, giving you herbs, giving you acupuncture. That's all absolutely required if you don't know about the classical Chinese medicine. As soon as you go into classical Chinese medicine, every time you slap there is 1,000 acupuncture needles at once. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. I used to have acupuncture. I don't need any of it anymore because there's no more pain. There's nothing to get rid of. It's all gone. But acupuncture is essential, just like cold plunges, just like intermittent fasting, if you don't have the knowledge that you could actually have now, which is the master key formula. And so how high do you want to go? That's the psychological thing. How much, I know you really love yourself and care about yourself more than you know, but you'll find out as you care and love yourself more, your body is what I'm talking about.
Well, I think this is where the mastery comes in, right? This is why you're so good at what you've done, because you have to believe it, you have to live in it, and you have to do it for quite a long period of time with many different demographics of people. How you talk to people. I mean, when I talk about personal training or working with people one-on-one, approaching every archetype a different way is the mastery of it. You know, you can't teach everyone the same way. You can't convince people that this works the same way as you would at everyone else. But you start to learn how certain people will adapt or accept that knowledge.
Right.
Because I think it is, you know, I think there's a level of how much faith people have in who's delivering the message, but then it's also how you deliver the message.
That's right.
Is just as important.
It's super important. And I have to be very respectful, because if I were to go back to myself 20 years ago and try to tell myself this then,
well, you'd probably be too salesy
I'd be like
about it.
Totally like over my head. Like, what? Sounds stupid. So I can't assume that people are already at the 10th rung of the ladder. They might not even be on the first, or maybe they're on the third. It's okay. I had to climb a ladder, right? It was no different. So learning that psychological approach, be respectful to where they are, be respectful of them as a person, and think about them, not me. I don't want you to do what I want you to do. I want you to do what you want you to do. And I'm just here to support that at whatever level you're at. And I'm not expecting you to suddenly accelerate. I certainly didn't suddenly accelerate.
No.
But once I'm up in the 10th rung or wherever, then I think, well, everybody should be here. True, but that's up to them.
But it took you 20 years to get to this point.
Right.
You know, and even for myself, I mean, I've been working out for a very long time, and it's only in the last 3 to 5 years that I've really kind of taken control of everything, or at least everything I have control of right now. But for a very long period of time, I didn't implement all the things that I'm doing right now.
Right.
You know, and I think society's helped, in social media and, you know, the knowledge that's out there has helped me believe what I believed for so long, but I was afraid to fully adopt it because I thought I was just going off wild thoughts that I had and things that I believed. But the more I lean into what feels right, the better it's become.
Right. So you're competing with your body.
Yeah.
So I realized I was, and my body was kicking my ass. I was going to die. It's like, what? So I came to a day where I realized that my body is not me, but it's a major part of me, and it's running the show. So I was like, okay, you're fired. You think you can outdo me? Well, let's find out. Because the being inside this body, started talking to my body like it's another person. And it started out with being addicted to Wendy's number 4 Supersize Me at 11:30 to 12 o'clock every day. And if I didn't have that, I was in agony, splitting friggin' migraine headaches, gut aches. That's how addicted I was. Really? I didn't even know I was addicted till I tried to stop. So for about 3 weeks, I had to give in every day because I couldn't work. By 1 o'clock, my headache was so severe, I'm done. So over I would go and eat that. And as soon as I ate that food, it all went away and I could go back to work. And after 3 weeks, I realized I was actually going to die doing that. That was part of my death cycle. Eating total garbage food, all GMO, full of all the chemicals from all the food scientists that make it addictive. So I realized I'm going to die.
Do you think these scientists do this on purpose? Do you think they put this shit in the food on purpose?
There's billions of dollars of research done into food science to make people addicted to food. Billions of dollars. It is 100% intentional. Just like the tobacco companies.
Yeah.
In 1994, my friend Brian Ardis, Dr. Brian Ardis, cool guy, he has a video where they videotaped all the top execs from tobacco companies in 1994 under oath in court, having to admit that nicotine is not addictive at all. At all. It's all the other stuff that's in there, the scientists who developed the cigarettes to make them hyper addictive. In fact, when you're addicted to cigarettes, I think it's the most pleasurable thing you could be addicted to, far more than any other drug, because you're doing it all day long. And I found out that when I was 21, because on my 21st birthday, I wanted to stop smoking. And in Canada, they have very high quality cigarettes. I was smoking Export AM Players. It's far superior to any tobacco in the United States. I smoked one from down here. It was like, tastes like trash. Okay, so on my 21st birthday, I threw the cigarette pack out the window on the way to work. None of my rig crew smoked, which was highly unusual. And I had an ashtray full of all these butts that were all done. I had a little bit left. I dumped that out on location on the ground, on the site where the rig was. And I was still so addicted. I wanted to stop. Every break, for the morning break, lunch, and then afternoon break, I would go out before the guys went back out on the rig because I was the boss on the rig. I would unravel that little butt and I would light it up and smoke it. And I have never had something so pleasurable in my life. I would like this because it was the concentration of all the stuff that was in the cigarette in that little bit left.
Oh, man.
And it was the biggest buzz ever. I felt it was better than sex or okay, it was the best. And so it took that was 2 weeks on that location. I smoked them all and it never rained once the whole time either. So they were sitting there all night, right? And they were perfect. And then I got transferred to another rig up in Grand Prairie. I worked out there for 7 weeks. I never got back off the rig for 7 weeks. And about halfway through that, I got a strep throat because I had a rheumatic fever when I was 1 year old. And that always messed me up. And strep throat was my Achilles heel.
Yeah.
And there was a water tank hauler that smoked on that crew. He was the only one. And I would borrow a cigarette from him at 2:00 in the afternoon every day I was up there. And about 3 weeks in, when I got the strep throat, I spent another week struggling to smoke a cigarette. And every morning I would get up in more pain, more pain, more pain. On the 7th day, or I didn't count it exactly, but about a week into that process, I woke up in the morning and the pain was so bad I wanted to be dead. It was that bad. And a switch just went chunk and it was over. I never craved another cigarette for the rest of my life right to this moment. And if it wouldn't have been for that, I don't know what I would have done. Like that was really heavy duty.
Do you look at that cyst or whatever you had, do you look at that as the biggest blessing in your life?
Yeah.
That completely changed the trajectory of your life. There are so many people out there, and I have many family members who've had cancer before and different issues. Even myself, I was very heavy as a kid. I had some severe back pain, but these problems that we have in life change the trajectory of our lives. And it's what you do with it. And, do I make this do I feel bad for myself and cry myself to sleep at night and deal with it? Or do I say, hey, I'm going to use this as my platform to shoot me in the opposite direction? And I think you've done a fantastic job with that. I couldn't imagine where you would be right now if that didn't happen to you. Because you probably would have kept going the same way you were.
I'd be dead.
Yeah.
I would be long gone. 15 years ago, I'd be dead for sure. You remember Sean Stevenson, the 3-foot giant?
Yeah.
Okay, so Sean did that TED Talk in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I am here to rid the world of pity, of feeling sorry for yourself, of feeling sorry for each other. If you're going to sit around and feel sorry for yourself, you're going to go down hard.
Because nobody gives a fuck at the end of the day.
That's right. No, that's your problem.
Yeah.
You had to stand. I had to stand up as much as I didn't want to. I wanted to lay down and die. That's what my body wanted to do. It was trying to convince me to do that. Mm-hmm. That's what most people do in those situations. And I just said, no, that's totally humiliating. Our youngest child was 6 at the time in 2004. And we had 7 children. So I'm like, hey, I get a big responsibility. None of this dying stuff is allowed. Get off your ass, you ugly, stinking, lousy, friggin' white male.
Yeah.
Right? And get out there and get this thing sorted out. Because the doctors aren't going to help you.
No.
I had doctors guessing constantly with me, going from one specialist to the next. It was my brother being the doctor and saying that you got to do this. My brother told me it's genetic predisposition 100%. The whole thing is genetic predisposition. He said, I see over 2,000 patients come to my clinic in my career with all the doctors that work with me. Every last one of them from all walks of life, different ages, different body types, everything else. Here, this guy eats out of the dumpster and parties his face off, lives till 94. Here's the other one eating organic and juicing, dying at 36. He said, it's total genetics. I said, yeah, really? That doesn't help me at all. He says, well, you look like Uncle Don. That was my uncle, died at 51 of cancer in 1978. And it's like, yeah, that's really helpful too. So listen, I'm not accepting that stuff. Mm-hmm. I said, I think it's me that is the problem. He goes, no, don't blame yourself. That's going to make it worse. I go, I'm not blaming myself.
Yeah.
I just think it's my responsibility to do something about this. Not yours, not the doctors in Toronto. They don't care. When they get a little check on their form that says I died, it's just a little check mark. I get a friggin' tombstone with my name on it. It's like, no.
Yeah. Well, I think we've we're out of time, right? All right. Well, listen, Ian, thank you so much for coming by. This was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you all learned something out there because the story's fascinating. Where could everybody find you?
Well, the activationproducts.com is the company.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're a natural product manufacturer. Otherwise, it's Ian Clark Activated on either Instagram or Ian Activated on TikTok and LinkedIn and a few different places. Yeah. And I share a lot of little, like short clips of stuff.
Yeah,
on the,
I love it. And you've blown up since I've met you. I mean, within the year, it's blown up.
Yeah.
So he's putting out a lot of gems. Guys, definitely check out Ian. Thank you guys again for tuning in to the Strong as Fuck podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and send it to a friend because they're going to learn something. And if you actually give a shit about your friends, you'll help them out. That was great, man.
that was good.
I love it.